Good evening, class. Good evening, everybody. Confirm if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Good evening, class. Good evening, students. Good evening, everybody, and happy new month. Welcome to yet another mind-shifting moment with the Electoral College Nigeria. Today's topic is the Constitution and the citizens' rights. So I would encourage all students, before I introduce our facilitator for today, to ensure that as you join the classes, you drop your attendance in the chat box alongside your political party. Be very attentive. The topic is an interesting topic that impacts all of us. So I will go straight to introducing our facilitator for today. Our facilitator today for today's class is Uchechi Ezrenyoha. Please, I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce the name correctly. I'm not from the Igbo cultural bloc. Uchechi Ezrenyoha is, sorry. Uche is a legal practitioner with a key focus on technology law and regulatory compliance. She serves as a legal consultant to famous inter-country adoption legacy in Nigeria, Life Foundation, BBC News Nigeria, and the Electoral College. She is the head legal consultant of Zoe Legal, a corporate, commercial, and startup legal advisory firm in Lagos State. She has worked with several local and international bodies on fintech, telecommunications, employment law, and immigration. In addition to her legal practice, she is very keen on public advocacy and the education of Nigerian youths on politics and governance. Uchechi is called to the Nigerian bar and has obtained an LLM in international commercial law from the University of Hertfordshire. She runs a podcast called Zoe Legal, where she speaks on legal issues and is keen on using her platform to encourage awareness and education among the masses. Thank you, and let's be attentive as I yield the mic to our facilitator to deliver her lecture.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yuri, thanks for that introduction. Okay, okay, someone's trying to help me share this. Okay. All right, so good evening, everyone. My name is Uchechi Ezenyiroha, and like he rightly mentioned, I am a lawyer. I've been practicing law for about 8 years now. So the topic for today is going to be around the human rights as it pertains to election and civic and political responsibilities. So I always prefer to ask a few questions at the start just to hear you guys out and to, just understand where you are with your knowledge on rights and your legal framework and all of that. So I'd just like to ask anyone in the class, you can introduce yourself and then just tell me what you know about rights as it pertains to your country, Nigeria. What do you understand about your rights in Nigeria, and what are the legal framework that helps to promote those rights. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so anyone can have the floor. Just talk about, just 1 minute. Tell me about what you understand rights to be, and also what you understand the legal framework of rights in Nigeria to be as well. You can raise up your hands or just indicate. Anyone? It would be great to hear your voice. Okay, Ibrahim.
Yes. Ibrahim, I've asked you to unmute, please.
Okay, there's someone else. Akirili.
Hello, good evening, madam.
Good evening, Ibrahim.
Okay, rights are legal, social, or ethical principles of freedom or entitlement.
Sorry, say that again.
Rights are legal, social, or ethical principles of freedom or entitlement.
Okay, legal, social principles of freedom or entitlement. Okay, very, very correct. It has to be legal, definitely. All right, anyone else? Okay, there's some messages on the chat. Oludare says the legal framework of citizens' right is the extent of one's freedom. Okay, and then Cletus says the standard of permitted action within a certain sphere are called rights. In other words, a right is any action of a person which law permits. I mean, you guys are pretty learned here. You know, I was just looking for a simple, basic understanding, but I see that I'm dealing with quite, advanced, quite an advanced class. But I'd just like someone to, break it down. What's the simplest form of rights that you understand? Like, how would you define rights to a 5-year-old? Let me put it that way. How would you define rights to a 5-year-old? Akirili, you can speak up. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I'll say rights are do's and don'ts. To a 5-year-old, what to do, what not to do, how to go about what you want to do, and how not to. And then what will restrain you to do some things that you want to do, or what will restrain your freedom if you do some things. That's how I would explain to a 5-year-old.
I love that. I love that. Just do's and don'ts. Very simple and straight to the point. Do's and don'ts. Okay, anyone else? David.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I think rights are what you enjoy as a citizens of a country, like what you enjoy, your freedom, the basic things the government you expect from the government, and what you expected to do as a citizen. I don't know if that is right.
That's absolutely right. Very much so. What you enjoy as a citizen. That in fact tells you that if you go to another country or if you go to another society, you may not necessarily enjoy those same things. So that's a very important thing, a very important point that you said, David. Okay, so I think I'll leave it at that. I love what everyone has said. Everyone hit the nail on the head. Your rights are simply your entitlements to have or to do something within a particular society or a particular group or organization, right? So if you take Nigeria, for instance, the mere fact of you being a citizen of Nigeria, the mere fact that you are called a Nigerian means that there are certain privileges that every citizen enjoys within the country, irrespective of whether you're a man or a woman, or whether you're Igbo, you're Idoma, or you are Ishekiri, irrespective of your religion, there's certain privileges that you just enjoy for the mere fact of being a Nigerian citizen, right? You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to subscribe for it. It does not expire as long as you are a Nigerian citizen. Those things accrue to you out there. You're entitled to those things. And not only that, the states, when I say state, I mean the country, the seat of power, they recognize and they protect those rights, right? So those are what makes it legal. The fact that there is a recognition of it, and there's also protection that is accrued to it under the law. All right, so can anyone just talk briefly about what they understand to be the legal framework of what those rights are in Nigeria? By legal framework, simply what are the institutions or what are the modalities of protecting your rights as a citizen? I hope that's understandable. So if you say you have a right, what makes you understand that you have those rights, and what makes you feel like you have those rights in Nigeria? Okay, Akerele, you can have the floor again. You can also drop on the chats. I'm happy to read your contribution on the chat as well. Akerele, your hand is up. You can speak if you want.
Okay. Thank you. I think by modalities, I think to know which court is competent to address your issue at a point in time. For example, customary issues, you go to customary court. For criminal issues, you go to magistrate. For election petition issues, you go to election petition court, maybe the Court of Appeal, and then up to the Supreme Court. So I think knowing where to go to settle disputes or to fight for your right is the legal framework. And that's it. Thank you.
Very, very good points. Thank you, Akerele. I think that's very, very important. But I think the most important framework for a citizen's right is what Oyelo just posted, the Nigerian Constitution. The Nigerian Constitution is the foundation, very correct, David, is the foundation of our rights as citizens. That's where everything starts from. That's where everything derives its legality. That's where every right derives its foundation from, the Nigerian Constitution. If it's not stated there, then I don't know what you're talking about. If you're not covered under the Nigerian Constitution, I don't know where your rights are from. So first and foremost, in law school, we used to call the Constitution the grand norm. That's like the grandfather, the oga pata pata of every law. And any other law that is contradictory to the Constitution is voidable to the extent of that contradiction. So as much as possible, we need to understand that the Constitution is the foundation of our rights in Nigeria, as our rights as citizens, our rights as men and women, and legal personalities in Nigeria. And after that, as Akerele rightly said, you also need to understand how you can seek redress for this right. So it's not just enough to know what these rights are, which of course is what you will get from the Constitution, but you also need to understand how you're able to seek redress. What does the law afford you, right, when your rights have been trampled upon? So for instance, like you mentioned, if someone, say for instance, trespasses on your land, right, you don't take a gun and shoot them, right? So there are different scopes to every single kind of right. You need to understand where it falls under. Is it a civil suit? Is it a criminal suit? Is it a fundamental human right? Is it justiciable? Is it, justiciable now means, is it something that the law can actually enforce for me? Or is it something that perhaps is just something I need to know and understand. For instance, my electoral rights, the right to vote. If I don't vote, you will not come and carry me and go to the police station because I did not vote. It's just a right that I can choose or may not choose to exercise, right? Right to own land, right to own property, things like that. It's not an enforceable right, but it's something that accrues to you just by the mere fact of you being a citizen of the country, right? So there are different legal frameworks, which we're also going to talk about. We're actually still on the content page. So we can move on to the next slide, please. Who is controlling the slides? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so we've talked about what rights are. We also talked about a little bit about what the framework for it is in Nigeria. I also like us to touch a little bit on the rule of law, right? Because we need to understand that without the rule of law in any society, it's going to be very difficult to say you have rights or to say that your rights are protected. Rule of law is basically the vehicle or the framework for the promotion and protection of legal rights in a country. Is that structure through which you can exercise power, and it's also that structure that a country has agreed to a certain rules and regulations, that a certain principle that they have come together to say, you know what, this is what we will be bound by. No one is going to be above this set of rules, and this is how we are going to enforce it. This is how we're going to ensure that it is protected. So a couple of principles around the rule of law. Superiority of the law. No one is above the law, right? Everyone is subject to the law. Now, I know some of you also have a little bit of pushback as to if that's really what's applicable in the country, right? But we also need to understand these things before we start, debating about them, right? So principles such as superiority of the law, separation of powers. So you have the legislative arm, you have the executive arm, and you also have the judiciary arm. The legislative arm promulgates the law, they make the laws, right? They deliberate on the laws. The executive arm enforces the laws, right? So we have, for instance, the police, which is under the executive arm. Then you then have the judiciary, which the ones that interpret the laws. It's very important as well in a society for the judiciary to be autonomous, right? Because you can't have the judiciary meddle in the affairs or be easily lobbied or easily corrupted. It's very important in protecting the rule of law that the judiciary is independent and autonomous as well. Also, there is also the enforcement as well. The law should be known and predictable. What that means is that if the law says one thing over one person, it should not now change, maybe because someone else is more affluent or from a different tribe. It should be predictable. So that's why we have precedents in law. You can go back and say, okay, if this case has been tried before, I can actually check and see what the judge said, and I can easily apply it to this case, right? It shouldn't be ever changing, except there are peculiar circumstances. The law should essentially be known and predictable. So I also like to open the floor now and ask, with your understanding of the rule of law, do you think that Nigeria has a protected system of rule of law in Nigeria? And why? If you say yes, why? And if you say no, I'd like to also hear your thoughts. Okay. Okay, really, you seem to be the most engaging one in class today. So yes, please, I'd like to hear you.
Thank you very much. I would say no. I don't think the rule of law is protected in Nigeria. Yesterday in class, we talked about rule of law also when they were talking about the judiciary arm of the government. We were made to understand, or we were made to even see clearly, that if the judiciary is being funded by the executive, you can influence the decision of the judiciary. So this is encapsulated in the whole rule of law thing, because there's a saying that he who pays the piper dictates the tune. And this is among many other things. This is amongst many other things. And the thing about funding and payment of salary and money and all of that, it influences whatever decision the rule of law can give. Thank you very much.
I that's a very good example. You know, if the judiciary is dependent on the executive for their remuneration, there's already a breach of independence there. We can't really say that the judiciary is indeed independent. So thanks for that as well. Anyone else? Why do you think Nigeria has a great protection of our rule of law, and why do you think so? Ibrahim, please. You can also post your thoughts on the chat as well. Yeah, Ibrahim, go ahead.
It's not the fault of the system, but the implementation, I mean the operation of the system. That is quite all right, the rule of law in the country, only that its application, mainly with security agencies, the court itself, and also the executive arm of the government, because a court of law can decide on a case, and then in the implementation, the security agent might not be able to implement it as how the court ordered. So you see, there is quite always the rule of law, only that its application. So if there is a full application of the rule of law, of course, it can work in Nigeria, because it has been working all over the world, madam. So you see, in my own opinion, there is fully rule of law, only its application. Just like our constitution now. You see, the constitution is in existence, but only its operation. When it comes to its operation, that's one we have, that's one the problem arises, because you see this constitution it emanates from America, and America are operating it very well. But here in Nigeria, because some people they don't have the interest of the nation in their mind, so they will try to bring in their interest in operating the system. I mean the constitution. That's why you can see members of the House, members of the House of Assembly. I mean the federal legislatures would just, I mean they would just pay the salary of their own. They will say, okay, this is what we are supposed to take home. This is our allowances, because if at all there is full control of the in the constitution, they are to be they are supposed to be given the table of salary by the Salary and Wages Commission, and they must abide to it. So it is not that it's not that we don't have the rule of law, but it's operation, madam. Thank you very much.
Very, very important points there, Ibrahim. Thank you. So in your opinion, it's not that there is no rule of law, but its implementation is what is faulty. And you also pointed out that the constitution is sufficient. It's just the application of it, and the people who are in charge of implementing it that have somehow lost the way. Okay, that's a great point. I will take that on as well. To core. Sorry if I'm saying it wrong. Okay, Aliyu, please share your thoughts. To core, Aliyu. Can you hear me, Aliyu?
Yes,
okay.
I can hear you. Good evening, ma. Good evening. Good evening, Electoral College. My name is Tukur Ali as well. I think I am of the same opinion with Akirele. I can say no, because if we take a look, for example, at the police or other paramilitary, we understand that, for example, sometimes if you are on a road, well, maybe you were stopped by a traffic or police or something else. Instead to follow you when they come, instead to stay or to wait for the traffic to give them command to move on, they will just come direct and fast. and the other people are waiting. I think there is no rule of law is not active at all. I don't think there is anything rule of law.
Okay.
Actually.
Okay. Yeah. So you is it a problem of it not being in existence or it not being implemented? Because those are two different things, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
is it that you don't think we have any rule of law at all, or that what we have is being abused? Because I think that's where both of you are.
No, we do have a rule of law, but it's like we are not following it. That's the problem.
Okay.
So it is not implemented.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Ali.
Thank you.
So just the last person now, Basit. Actually, I'll let you speak. Let me just hear from Basit in case he or she has a different opinion. Ayilara.
Ayilara Basit.
Yes, hi.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, CN. Good afternoon, moderator. I'm Ayilara Basit once again. Well, I'm of the same opinion with Mr. Akerele. Though, the only thing that is supposed to happen, I can say our rule of law is not being protected because the people, in my own opinion, that I think that they should be the protector of the law, are in one way or the other still bends it, manipulates it in their own favor, and those are the legislatives. Because to what we learned in the class yesterday, they are the one to pass the budget that the judiciary submitted to the executives. So for them, still they will still have to kind of have the opportunity of kind of tilting the law in their own favor a little bit. But so the check and balance, I think the check and balance is what we really need to work on as a country, that I think will be in a very good position to protect our law. Because now the executive that is enforcing the law are using it in their own favor. For a good example, the other day in my own state, which is Ogun State, the governor of the state ordered the DSS to arrest a local government chairman. Just on the basis of the chairman went public saying the local government funds are not being released to them. And maybe some part of the funds were only released to them, and it's not even enough to go about and do what is meant for them to be done as a chairman of the local government. So the DSS was ordered to arrest him on the order of the executive. And these are the things that really need to be checked and balanced. So I would say, in my own opinion, the rule of law is not fully protected in Nigeria. So there is need for a check and balance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thanks a lot. I align with that as well. Okay. So we'll just have Akerele speak, and then we'll have Martins lastly, just so that we can. Well, thanks, guys. I'm enjoying the conversation. Akerele, after you, then Martins.
Okay, thank you very much for allowing me again. Respectfully, I disagree with Mr. Ibrahim. These things happen every day in this country, every other day. And a very good example is what Mr. Ayilara Basit just mentioned. You see, the rule of law, whether it's protected or not, is a foundational issue. I do not think it's an applicational issue. No. If this is a systemic issue, if you have competent judges, competent lawyers, competent constitution at that, but the system is consistently working against the perfect or the just application of the law, there's no way you will now blame application alone. Like, it's a foundational issue. They used to say that if the foundation be destroyed, what can the righteous do? It is a system. It's a system already. Another example is the case of former governor of Kogi State, who was supposed to be arrested. They got a court injunction, I think from Federal High Court, or was it the State High Court, that he should be arrested. But there are people who could enforce the law. Now look at it. There are people who could enforce the law who were guiding him. But because of power from above, I hope Mr. Ibrahim is listening. It's not the application now. They can easily apply that court injunction and just arrest Mr. Yaya Bello and take him to the court or wherever they want him to be taken to. But because the system has protected him. So even if we have a competent judge or a competent law, you cannot supersede that executive order that do not allow the application of that law. So I think it is just a systemic situation here. It is not the application of the law that is the problem. The rule of law is not protected. Is not at all. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that. But again, you mentioned it's a system issue. But who makes up a system? A system does not exist in a vacuum. Systems are made up of people that have been elected or have been appointed, right? A system is still governed or is still formed by human beings like me and you. So you can't speak of a system without speaking of the people who are actually in charge of implementing this law. So I still see where Ibrahim is coming from, right? So in essence, he's saying that the writings are there. The law is sufficient on its own. But the people who are saddled with the responsibility of implementing this law used it and found a way to play it to their favor, right? It's not a function of let's overthrow what we have, or let's rewrite the constitution, or let's write something else, because what we already have is sufficient. I think that's what Ibrahim was saying. But I also agree with you as well, that it is a systemic issue. It's something that is like it's bone deep. It's bone deep. It's not just a surface layer thing of, okay, let's move away with this particular set of leaders and bring in the next set. There's a systemic, institutionalized, level of corruption and abuse that needs to really be looked at. So either way, I still see where both sides are coming from. Okay, so we'll just have Martin speak very briefly, and then we'll move on with the class. Well, thank you. Thanks for that contribution. Okay, if Martin is not available, Idris, you can speak, and then we will move on with the class.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. So sometimes I wonder if there really law in Nigeria. Although I stand to be corrected, Sha. But anytime you talk about rule of law, I imagine, is there any rule of law in Nigeria? Do law exist in Nigeria? Because when you check the issues surrounding the rule of law, we keep on saying system. Who are the systems? The systems are still the people now. Are we not really the people? When you check the whole scenario, like the recent scenario of the Kano Emirate, you see where a federal high court is giving different judgment, a state high court is giving different judgment. What happened to the law? Is it that they are operating on two different laws? So the issue of rule of law is more of we checking balance within ourselves.
Yeah.
It's more of the rule of law is there and it's not being protected actually. And it's more working on ourselves. Because sometimes I even see the judiciary as our problem in terms of rule of law, because you end up seeing the NBA giving different judgment, the CJN, something of that nature, giving different judgment. So it's more of we coming back, check balance, do the right thing at the right time, because we will not just complain that the system is not working out. Are we not the system? So it's sound within ourselves. But for me, I've said it several times, Nigeria is still a lawless country. It's baffling when I see issue regarding law. So that is just my little take. I just have to drop.
Thank you for that. It's not a lawless country. You need to see some countries to really, I mean, to an extent, we still enjoy a degree of freedom and democracy, which I think we should still be thankful for.
Sorry, Martins Uja still want to contribute. Should we unmute?
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Right.
Please, Martins, you can go ahead.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hello, can you? Okay. Yeah. So, thank you again, Madam Uchechi, for your very interactive class. Easy assimilation. I'm enjoying it, and I also like what you did with Akerele Peters and Ibrahim's contributions, which I felt that should have been more or less. I wish that Akerele Peter agreed with Ibrahim in a way that his conversation would be a continuation of the previous person's contribution, because I don't see the disagreement as much. And that brings me to the point of to say that our rule of law is not well protected. And I say that because I think that if you tell a child today that you are going to punish them, and you only do that as a threat, and you don't implement it, a time is going to come when you say that and the child will only start laughing at you. So, which now makes me to emphasize on the aspect of implementation. Not to say that we don't have laws, but those laws are just there, placeholders. In a country where you have someone abuse the mace, a symbol of authority, and in a twinkle of an eye, you have the same symbol empowering the person. It's shameful, right? So Buhari administration comes and claims to be their mantra is to fight corruption, but under the same administration, corruption is perpetrated far more than any other administration we've had before them. So I think that implementation of those laws becomes the biggest on protection, if there's a word like that, the biggest menace to the protection of the laws, hampering the sustainability of those laws going forward. So that's my contribution. I will stand to be corrected as we go forward in the places I've made errors. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Martins. You know what? I think that the importance of conversations like this is to at the end of the day align and see where we are all in agreement on, right? Because as much as we are saying we don't agree and we agree, to be honest, I feel like we're all saying the same things, right? We're all saying, we all have our minds in the same scope. There's an issue with implementation. There's an issue with the system. There's a lot that needs to change. And again, we also, during the course of this class, we also see what our part is to play and how important it is for us not to give up, how important it is for us not to throw in the towel. I know a lot of times we think that Nigeria is the most ridiculous country ever, but believe you me that there are some countries that have it a lot worse. And even these countries that we glorify and we talk about, the West, the US, and all of these places, there is a lot of corruption that goes in there. But the truth is that they have done the work. They have come a long way. That is why they're able to at least exist and operate on a very basic level of protection of the rule of law. At least the common man knows that their rights will be protected. Their rights are promoted and well secure at the basic level. But there is still corruption everywhere. It's just the magnitude of it and how far people are willing to go to amass power for themselves. But again, we are all saying the same thing. There's a problem with implementation. There's a problem with the system. But the laws are there. We don't even need to even go to all these other smaller regulations. The Constitution on its own is sufficient. It's just that when people are elected into office and they say they're going to do one thing, they go up there and they turn the whole thing around and it becomes something else. But as it is, if we even implement 20%, or even if we even enforce 20% of what the constitution is, I think we will actually make good progress, right? Yeah, thank you for that, Basit. There's corruption around the world. Trust me, there is nowhere, even your wonderful Great Britain and the US. Look at what's happening with Biden and Trump now. I mean, using the entire system to suppress one man. But yeah, let's focus on our dear Nigeria. All right. Okay, so I think we can move on with the slide. Can go to the next slide. Thank you everyone for your wonderful contributions. Okay, so we've talked about this, what rights are. So this is like an academic definition of what rights are. Rights are legal, social, or ethical principles of freedom or entitlement. That is, rights are the fundamental normative rules about what is allowed of people or owed to people according to some legal system, social convention, or ethical theory, right? So rights will differ from one structure or one system to another. They will what is accrued to you in Nigeria is obviously not accrued to you in the US. And also, if a US citizen comes to Nigeria, their rights will definitely be watered down. But as a Nigerian, we're all definitely assured of our basic rights as citizens. Okay, please let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so we talked about the legal framework. So this is basically or strictly for election, because that's what we're here for, the political rights and civic responsibilities. So we have the Constitution as the main body. Someone had also mentioned the courts, the judiciary, or the court system, which is a system of interpretation of the laws. We also have the different separation of powers, the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary, which I believe we all understand. We also have the Electoral Act, which obviously makes laws and regulations that surround or guide the electoral system in the country. We have the INEC regulations. We have international instruments as well. So the thing with the international instruments is that it has to be ratified into the country before it becomes implemented into that country. So if you just go to the next slide, there's some international promulgations or acts that we have. Okay, it's quite little. So let's just move on to the next slide. So some of them have been ratified into law in Nigeria, and some of them we just use them, we just refer to them. They're not necessarily enforceable in Nigeria. Okay, so moving on to our civil and political rights as Nigerians. I mean, we should all know this by now, being wonderful students of the Electoral College. By now, we all know that we have these rights as citizens, and we do not only have them, or we not only speak of them, but it is important that at every point in time, we exercise these rights, because it's not just enough for us to have these debates, these intelligent debates, and talk about how, Nigeria is whatever it is. If we as citizens, we are not taking on this rights that we have. I understand. I can hear your thoughts even from here that in the last election, look at what happened. But if we throw in the towel, and if we decide to sit at home, if we decide to not take on our arms and come out every single time it happens, who is it? Who are we doing? Right? Who is going to suffer for it? Who is going to bear the brunt of it? Right? Because at the end of the day, we'll end up coming back, complaining about the people in power, complaining about who has been elected, complaining about the people in the legislative house, and it will be the same cycle. So these rights, they're not just decorative. They're not just music to our ears. They're not just, something to be talked about. They are power. This is power. This is our power as citizens of Nigeria, or as Nigerian citizens. This is our claim to fame, our claim to power, our claim to authority, the right to vote in an election, the right to join a political party, The right to run for. An American citizen will not come and participate in your politics, no matter how much commentary they do, no matter how much observation they do, no matter how much, what do they call it? Interference. They will never be able to vote except we change our constitution. They will never be able to cast that vote. They will never be able to join a political party. They will never be able to run for office. It is you and I that have that right. And in essence, it's you and I that will end up giving up that right and allowing it to be influenced and allowing it to be watered down into what it has become. So as much as possible, as much as it sounds like we sound like a broken record, these are what makes us powerful as citizens. These are what makes us, you know, authoritative in every single space in Nigeria. You cannot, even if you japa, for the ones that are claiming to japa, you know, you cannot go and be joining or going to vote in another person's land, except you naturalize the good and fine. But if you want to make progress in Nigeria, these rights are what will give you power. These rights are what will give you an expression. These rights are what will be able to make a change in our political climate, in our systems, in our implementations, right? Even if it is that you're not casting the vote, you run for the office. You participate in this political rallies. You take on positions that can influence the system. You join in the events, join in the rallies, vote, speak up, you know, campaign for the people that you think are reasonable, people that you think that can actually make a change, you know, and put those people, hold them to the fire. Because we always think that the job ends when they're elected. No, it continues. Even if your people did not win, you have a role as the opposition. You have a role as an opposition to act as a torchlight and mirror whatever they say and use your power, your voice, your freedom of expression, right to speak, you know, to criticize and also put people in place. You know, I feel like we have come a long way with the political apathy that we've experienced. We've actually come a long way in the way that we are now participating. But we also need to be armed with education and knowledge about what these laws are, what these rights are, right? When you put someone in power, what then can you do? What other thing can you do? What other roles can you play? What other rights are you entitled to? Can you recall them if they are not acting right? Can they be impeached? Can there be a referendum that you can, you know, bring them out from where they are seated? You know, these are the things that will put people in check. And mind you, the people that are elected, they know the law. They know the law. We are the ones that do not know the law. They know the law so much that they are able to use it to do whatever they want to. Because at the end of the day, we do not operate a dictatorship system in Nigeria. We do not operate an autocratic system. We are still a democracy. Even if some people would differ, we are still a democracy. So as much as possible, people are still bound by some sets of rules and regulations. So if they are going against that rules and regulations, you also owe it to yourself to know what they are. Because some people, you know, they criticize. I know when this man was in power, the vice president, he was heavily criticized, but nobody stepped back to say, what are this man's what's the extent of this man's power? What exactly can he do? I'm talking about Osibanjo. There was so much criticism against him. Oh, why can't he do? Why can't he do? Like, his powers are very, very limited. His powers are limited. Same goes with the deputy governor. Their powers are very limited. You know, you need to know who is who. What is the function of the local government chairman? What's the function of the speaker of a House of Assembly? The ones in the representative house, the ones in the Senate. What are these people's rights? How can they be influenced? Is there a position in their offices that you can also play your role? If you're able to write bills, if you're able to, you know, curate, you know, tangible bills or things that can actually make a difference, what role can we actually play? Because sitting back and criticizing. There is a role for that, but we would not really go forward if we're not actually actively putting our hands to the plow and making a change. Granted, we are a lot behind than other countries, but bear in mind that these other countries, they've been around for years and years and years, and they've made their mistakes and they've gotten it right somehow to an extent. So yes, we have a right to vote in an election, right to join a political party, right to run for office, right to participate freely in political rallies, events, or protests. We can move on to the next slide. Okay, so these are civil rights. These include ensuring people's physical and mental integrity are preserved, you're being protected or from being discriminated upon based on your gender, national origin, color, sexual orientation, ethnicity, and you also have a right to speech and expression, religion, press, assembly, and movement. So this in general is just telling you that you have the rights to participate in the political climate of your country without any form of discrimination, be it from your origin, color, whatever it is. You have a full right to participate, and no one should take that from you. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we've talked about this as well, political rights. Yes, right to petition, right to assemble, freedom of association. Okay, Basit, you posted something on the group. Do you want to talk about what do you understand by the recall process? Can you enlighten the class on what the recall process looks like? Is this something you've looked into? Have you participated in one before? Who knows anything about the recall process or referendum? Okay. Basit, can you hear me? Okay, let's move on then. All right, let's move on. So rights of citizens as provided for in the Constitution. So there are a couple of questions here that I'd actually like for us to talk about before we go into those rights. What do you think about the human rights in system in Nigeria? Do you think it is respected? Do you think that our justice system have the will to treat the issues of human rights without fear or favor? And does the country have the institutional framework to tackle and grapple with the human rights abuses? Also, lastly, does the Nigerian government know what the human rights and tenets of democracy are? So anyone can unmute and just speak on this in general. I hope you can hear me. Where are all my speakers? Am I audible? The eerie silence. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. We can hear you.
Okay, okay. So anyone can speak on any of these questions, please.
Can you hear me? You ask if we respect human rights in our constitution, right? I would
Peter,
say,
you can speak. We can hear you.
hello, can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you, Peter.
Yeah, I was saying that the question I want to react to is whether our constitution respects human rights, right? That's what you ask. Yeah, my answer would be not completely, because the way our constitution First of all, since there's no independence in the judiciary, in the rule of law, there's no way it will not be influenced. And this comes to human rights. If the human rights of someone that is actively criticizing the government, I don't want to mention any government here because we are in a public class. If this human right of a certain person who actively speaks against the government is at stake, and the ruler at that time or the leader at that time wants the person's right to be trampled upon, you have no doubt, you can guess right what will happen to that person. So I won't say that human right of people uh, can be protected with the kind of constitution or with the kind of rule of law we have. Thank you.
Well, Peter, have you read the Constitution have you read the chapter 4 of the Constitution? And are you saying that what we have in the chapter 2 actually of the Constitution does not properly provide for the protection of the human rights in Nigeria? Have you gone through it? Okay, Victor, you can speak as well. Okay, Bassett said you can have freedom of speech, but freedom after speech is not assured. One thing I wanted to also mention is that your rights are not your freedom, or your rights are, they're not absolute rights, or they're not absolute privileges. You know, they're still within a context. There's still boundaries to it. So say, for instance, you know, you gave an illustration about speaking against a leader, or, you know, you can't criticize the government. You can't speak, but then your speech or whatever you're saying should not toe the line of treason. It should not toe the line of trying to overthrow or trying to replace that government, because then that would now be an attack. Exactly. There are limitations. Thank you very much, Aziz. There are limitations to the right. It's just, for instance, saying you have the right, you have freedom of assembly. You now want to come and assemble on a third mainland bridge, right? You have now gone against another person's rights. Or to say you have the right to movement, freedom of movement. You now want to go and move into army barracks or move into another person's house. So there are limitations to these rights. You know, they are not absolute rights. So as much as possible, we also need to have the knowledge of what the boundaries are. You know, there's something called educated speech, you know, and diplomacy when we speak. You know, there is, I love what this man does sometimes on his platforms, Peter Obi. He does a good job of the opposition. He criticizes, but not in a way to overthrow the government, because that would then toe the line of treason. That's a treasonable felony, and that's a very serious matter. I don't know if you guys have heard about this Erisco food issue that's happening currently with the man who the lady had put up something on Facebook criticizing his business, you know, and then she had said something like your product is killing people or something like that, you know. So he has now initiated a, thank you, Bassett. I think you're my co-anchor today. So he has now implemented his own redress, sought his own redress, because in his opinion, she has defamed his character and his business, right? So there's that debate of, does she really have that freedom of expression to go that extent and to say what she said? And what's the consumer protection in all of this? You know, what rights does a consumer have? Can a consumer not criticize a product again? But then even within that criticism, what's the extent of criticism that you can do? And now social media doesn't even make things easy, because when you put things out there, you have to bear in mind that you're not just talking to your few friends, you're making a declaration to the entire world. So now your scope of of reach has expanded, right? So there are all these things to consider legally. So as much as possible, it's always very important for us to educate ourselves, to actually know what is applicable and what is not applicable before we go out there and just make these things. Granted, there's a huge abuse going on. There's a huge, twisting and manipulation going on within the system. But as much as possible, we owe it to ourselves to at least know the extent of our rights, the limitations, and what is available to us as a people. There's someone whose hands are up. Victor Ahmed Hachi. You can unmute.
Yeah, pronounce the name so well.
All right,
Good evening.
good evening.
Well, the issue of human rights. Recently, in fact, over the years, it's something that we say it's not perfect anywhere in the world, but it's being trampled, though protected, but is it really being implemented, like human rights of people in Nigeria? Is it really being protected actively, like the Constitution has clearly stated? The problem with this issue is that right from the top up to the common man, like from the leadership to common man, the common man suffers more because some of these things, when it happens, there is suppression one way or the other for someone that his right has been trampled to be given the right justice. So I will not say it is not protected. It's protected, but it's not actively protected. That is what I want to describe the situation as. And when we are talking of rule of law, for instance, earlier, I wanted to say this because I noticed something from experience, and it's even very common. Like, even if someone go against the law and is supposed to be punished, there is this sympathetic nature with Nigerians. Like, there was an experience I had, and it was caught red-handed, but we were like, if we report him now, he will not be able to get to what to feed his family. So please, let's be able to bear with him, which is very wrong because, like we discussed in our last class yesterday, that even she described it as the fourth arm of the government, so that we citizens, we have an important role to play in maintaining all of this, in maintaining the integrity of our constitution and for seeking progress as a nation. So like we contribute to it ourselves, like we just decide, okay, let this one just bear with it, like that. People are not really being punished for offenses they commit, even with the common man. And so you can't even stand the chance of saying someone is at the top when he trample upon your rights. You have all that you need to to hold him accountable, because even we as individuals, we are failing in many ways, which is something that if we are able to get right, I think some of these small issues with the leaders and the whole system will be tackled. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Victor. And I think one other thing that people do not talk about as often is also people's desensitization towards seeking legal redress for their wrongs. There's such a an arm's length treatment of going the legal route. Like if someone actually does something to offend you or to trample on your rights, it's not the first thing people think about, which is not so abroad. People are, they can easily go to the small claims courts, can easily, file your matter. You can even do it by yourself. You don't also necessarily have to have a lawyer. There are some matters that you can easily just file by yourself, especially with small claims. And there are all these structures that people can easily just walk into and seek redress for their cases. I also think that that's also something that we are backwards in Nigeria. The legal system just seems so far away, and it seems like such an elitist system that the common man cannot easily seek redress. And it seems like it's also an expensive route, and it's also very tasking as well. It's very tasking, the amount of adjournments that happen. I think by and large, Lagos is a state that has gone quite forward when it comes to the judiciary system. But in other states, people adjourn cases for years. People even die. People inherit cases. It's very discouraging. So as much as possible, people just try to talk amongst themselves or just let go. And it's also not healthy because it breeds bitterness and discontent. These systems are there for the common man to actually, seek redress and to be satisfied and be comfortable. You know, I agree with you, Victor. We do a lot of pity party and we let things go. Perhaps also because people do not trust the legal system and not trust that their rights will really will be protected, or their redress will be met as well. So there's also that to contend with. But thanks.
Yeah, that's true. But like you mentioned, the issue of the process is quite expensive in a way, because you can hardly report a case in police station and go without spending anything right now in Nigeria, which is bad for a common man. So it makes the whole thing difficult, yes, but it's something we can still do, I believe.
I agree with you. That the police one is even another thing entirely. It's very disheartening. You go to the police station, you are the one being robbed, God forbid, and you end up having to pay and all this. It's crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, so anyone else? Anyone else wants, or does someone believe that we have a great system? I'd like to hear someone who is pro the Nigerian system. Let's hear you. Do we have any supporters? No? Okay. Okay, let's move on. I was hoping that I would have one person or two. Okay, so let's just run through the rights. I'm sure we all know this. So we have rights to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. So you can just keep scrolling with the slides. Rights to expression and the press, rights to peaceful assembly and association. So those three rights, I like to lump them together actually, because there's something that happened during the last election that I think that we need to be loud about. You know, there's a way people shame people for what they choose to support. That is actually not healthy. It's not healthy. It does not promote proper it does not promote respect for one another. It does not promote peaceful participation. I think that people should be allowed to support whoever they want to support, right? People should be given the leeway and the respect to choose or to make their decisions and not to be bullied into supporting whatever it is that is popular. Because again, with our political system, it is still developing, right? Because I think that in the West, if someone says they are a Democrat or they are a Republican, that goes without saying. There's some implied terms or there are some implied beliefs or alignments with who you support. But with Nigeria, if you say you're supporting PDP or ABC, we don't really know what you're talking about. There's no ideology behind the political system. So as much as possible, I think that we need to learn to hear people out. We need to learn to respect people's system of beliefs or thought process in whatever they believe in, and look more at peacefully and respectfully convincing people on what your ideology is. If you feel you have a better ideology, rather than bully people and like drag people on social media, and some people dragging celebrities, people cussing them out. We can't go from one extreme to another extreme. You know, it's absolutely shameful as a people and as an educated people to shame people away from what they believe in. If you feel that your ideology is better, then make a case for it. Put up an argument for it and see how you can convince other people in a respectable manner, rather than, shame people. It doesn't make sense. You see people having debates, you're a Democrat, you're a Republican, we have healthy debates. You can go back and forth, lay your case. And then you even see people converting because they've been properly converted in a way. I think that's what we should actually encourage. Your ideologies, we should also try and see how we can formulate ideologies around our political parties, because if I tell you now I'm supporting NN, is there any particular NNPC? There's an NN party. If I tell you that's who I'm supporting, you don't know what that means. It's just a man. It just means a person, or it's just a face. There's no ideology behind political parties. I think it's just recently with the Labour Party that there was a semblance of ideology. And that should actually be encouraged because it would make for a healthy political debate and rivalry. It would make for a healthy one. So as much as possible, let's allow people their rights to association, their rights to assembly, rights to their conscience, and however they want to. Let people be. I think it's something that we really need to promote as well. Okay, so moving on. The next one is the freedom of movement. Obviously, we all know that as well. But again, to understand that this freedom is not absolute. There are limitations to it as well. There is right to freedom from discrimination. Obviously, your race, your gender, your religion, your tribe should not be discriminated against. Right to acquire and own immovable property anywhere in Nigeria. Okay, so moving on to the INEC. So we're quickly rounding up the INEC regulations and guidelines for conduct of elections. So we all know this. You have a right to register. Every single person, as long as you're above the age of 18, you have a right to register, right to vote, and be voted for when registered. I'd actually love to see a number of us here from the Electoral College run for office. Run for your local government office. I know in the last election, a number of us actually did. I remember someone from the South and the Southeast as well. It was very beautiful to see people run for office, people campaign and be actually frontliners in rallies and things like that. So we also have the right to recall an elected representative, right to secrecy when voting. There was a lot of bullying people and telling people, I must know who you're voting for. Is very, very wrong. You have the right to privacy when you're voting because it is your personal choice and it's a choice that is given to you as a person, a singular person in Nigeria. So no one else has the right to know when you're voting or who you're voting for. Right to attend, and that's also why we have that secret vote casting structure when you're going to vote. You have the right to attend rallies and campaigns of political parties and candidates, and right to information about the election, which I'm sure that INEC does a good job of that, telling us when and where the votes are happening. And yeah. Okay, so the next slide. All right, so finally, so these are my final thoughts. The Nigerian Constitution outlined in its provisions fundamental human rights. The problem is not that the legal sorry, let me just expand that. The problem is not that the leaders do not know about the law. It is the problem of implementation. For any development to take place, government should find a way to marry democracy, rule of law, and human rights. Yeah, so that's how I would summarize this entire class. But yeah, I would like to hear your final thoughts. Any other thing you'd like to speak on if we still have time? If we still have time, and also questions as well. Thank you so much. This was a great class.
Thank you so much, man, for a very informative and entertaining lecture. It was very, very interactive. So students, we've come to the end of the class. It's time for questions and answers. I believe we've been forming our thoughts why the lecture was on. If you can drop your questions in the chat box, we are going to be taking them in this order. Those that have raised their hand, I'll ask them to unmute and ask their questions while we check the inbox and ask alongside. Thank you. So let's begin with Mr. Ibrahim Jerry. Your hand is up. I've asked you to unmute. Ask your question, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good evening once again. Madam Barrister, your lordship, you have concluded your conclusion. According to your conclusion, you said it is a problem of implementation by our leaders. Well, I agree with you, but I also want to add that, these constitutions, there is development of Nigerian constitution. You know that we have pre-independent constitutions, and then we have post-independent constitution. So I will say our problem started right from our pre-independence constitution, because our 1912 constitution, it was a proposal by Lord Legard, and then the second one by 1922 by Clifford, and then up to Richard Constitution. So you see, all this was a set of proposals by the colonial masters, and after the independence, that is was independent constitution, you see, all the constitutions were arranged and proposed by military rulers. Even this 1999 constitution, it was organized and almost approved by military, because it was during Abdul Salam Abubakar that this constitution was this constitution was put in place. So I'm not only blaming the leaders that they don't that in the implementation of the constitution, but I can say that we have inherited this problem right from our colonization. So if you have any idea, please let me, Madam, I'm hearing from you now. Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Was that Ibrahim? I don't know who that was. Who just
Yes, it was Ibrahim.
Oh, okay, Ibrahim. Thank you very much for that. I think what I would say is this: we can't wipe away our history. We can't detach ourselves from the fact that Nigeria was colonized by the West, with the Western world. We will always have that to contend with. We'll always have that as our history. There's no way that we can all of a sudden decide to move away from what was. We will always have that as our building block, as our foundational I don't know how to put it. Not just Nigeria. Same with other African countries. Same with most African countries. We will always have that as our history, that we were colonized by the West, right? So the fact that whether it is our national anthem or our constitution or the way we were separated or the name Nigeria, I think that those are arguments that it's like overdone at the end of the day. Some of those arguments, it's over, because it's like, so what do you want us to do? Do you want us to scrape the historical aspects of our colonization? We can't do that. We will always have that as our foundation. We will always have what was given to us by Lord Lugard or whoever it was as the foundation. Now, granted, it was passed on and it was edited and reviewed, and now this is what we have now. We are no longer under the colonial rule, right? But we have a system of rules. Is there something within those system of laws that is somehow arbitrary or somehow a tightrope or somehow infringing on our rights as persons in Nigeria? Have we looked at it critically and said, oh, section this is actually against my freedom as an Igbo man or as a Hausa man, or our arguments more sentimental, right? Because I still think it's a problem of implementation. I still think it's a problem of leadership. Because like I said, if we even implemented half of what the Constitution is on face value, if we even implemented half of what the rules are and the laws of the Constitution have provided for on face value, we would actually make a lot of progress. But we dance around and manipulate and abuse, and like someone was saying, there's a law, but you're using your executive powers to override the law. Like, the law has already done what the law is supposed to do. The law has already provided for what the law is supposed to provide for. But human beings who are now in place, who have been elected into office, have abused that authority and brought in some other elements and suppressed the judiciary and done all these other things. So I don't think there's a problem with our constitution. I mean, I did quite a study of it while in school. There was nothing that there are some questionable sections that still offered it, but nothing big enough to be like, oh my God, this is a horrible body of work and we absolutely need to throw it into the bin. That's still my opinion though. But then again, we were colonized by the British. We can't run away from it. We can't run away from it. Now we're now going back to the old national anthem. There's no running away from it. So yeah, I hear your point, Ibrahim. But at the end of the day, yeah.
Madam, we can't run away from it, but You see, that's why the Constitution is full of so many loopholes. You can be given right here, and it can be taken away from on the other hand. Maybe probably because you have inherited this kind of thing right from our colonization, madam. This is what I'm saying.
So okay, so you think that the body of law itself is problematic?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's an opinion.
What do you have comment? What is your comment? Because you see, madam, we have all the structures in place, right from the Sharia court. You know, we have the magistrate court, we have the high court, and even court of appeal and supreme. So we have all the structures of our court put in place. Only that we inherited this kind of system right from our colonization. And you know, these white men, how they are. They don't usually do the right thing during the colonization. They just do what they like, so that they will have what they want. This is what I wanted to point out, madam. Unless if you have any other option besides this.
No. I hear you, Ibrahim. But at the end of the day, let's look at the substance critically. The idea that we have the magistrate, the high court, the court of appeal, the Supreme Court is actually for your benefits, right? So that at least you have a system of appeal, and no one court will have authority or the last say. There's a system of still another person can still overlook, override, you know. So I see your point in saying that, but I also think that these things in and of itself were made for good. But people come in and then they abuse it and use it for what they want to use it for, their own personal gain. But on the face of it, it's actually for the benefit of the citizenry, right? That if you were convicted of one thing in the state high courts, at least you can appeal. That a higher authority can actually look at it and say, oh, okay, there was an error in this judgment. There was an error here. Let's actually look at it again, you know. But yeah, I hear your point as well. Thank you. Thanks for that contribution.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma. So Tuko Aliyu, you can unmute and ask your question, sir.
Good evening once again, ma, and thank you for this wonderful lecture.
Thank you.
Mine is of clearance of doubt concerning the participation of civil servants into politics and being a partisan, because some people are saying that it is impossible for civil servants to engage into politics. I don't know, so I need more explanation.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that clearly. Please, can you repeat your question?
I say it's clearance of doubt. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Some people are saying that a civil servant cannot be a partisan, and also he cannot engage into politics. I don't know whether that is correct or not. That's what I'm asking.
Civil servants while in active service?
Yes. Active civil servants.
Civil servants while in active service cannot engage in politics. Yes, I think there's something like that. I'm not quite certain, but I'd like to open the floor for someone who probably has a better opinion on that. I believe there's something like that. Civil servants cannot participate in politics, in active service, actually. Can anyone take on that question? I think Victor.
Victor, you can unmute and contribute. I've asked you to unmute, Victor.
I'm raising my hands to ask a question, actually. It's not to respond to the question he asked.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, so yeah, I believe so, a rule like that civil servants are not to participate in while in active service. They're not supposed to participate in political endeavors. Just looking at it on face value, perhaps because they're already within the government system, and perhaps they might tend to use the information they are privy to facilitate their campaign or whatever. And again, civil servants are being paid for, they are being funded, or they're being remunerated by taxpayers. So in essence, you can't use my money to be funding your political ambition. But anyway, I will need to look at it, but just vaguely, I'm sure there's a prohibition like that. While you're in active service, you would have to retire, you'd have to step down or resign from office before participating. But like I said, I'm not very well versed, but I think there's something like that.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Victor, you can ask your question now. Victor, go ahead with your question, please.
Yes, sure. Is
Okay.
that me?
Hello.
Hi, Victor.
Hello.
We can
Okay,
hear you,
thank
Victor.
you.
Ask
Thank you
your
for the
question.
opportunity again. My question, sometimes ago, I think if it's not last year, if I can remember very well, there were concerns raised on the fact that citizens' liberty will be affected by the constitution we're using, largely because they feel too much power has been given to the central government, the central body, that is the federal government now, let's say. Now, all of these things have been seriously debated, and we've seen it over time that it's still been repeated in many instances. Now, as Nigerians, that we are not happy with it, there are provisions for us to be able to challenge some of these things. But what are the right ways to go about challenging this, for instance?
Challenging what, please?
Like constitution, the nature of the constitution that is not really protecting the common man, for instance. Like, okay, we have House of Representatives that are not really representing us in a way, or senators that are not legislating laws that will be for our own good. We feel they are not doing the right things for us. And even the election process has been giving advantage to those that have the big bag to be able to get up there. But as citizens, like what happened with the NSAS, for instance, Nigerian youth were able to command attention to the issue of police brutality and bad governance. Now, as one that is being so, because they were labeled like they did not that we did not do it right in a way with the NSAS process. We've not done it right, and so what is the right way to do? Because I've not seen. I don't know the constitution very well. I cannot say I'm a master of it because I don't know if there is a particular way to go about dealing with issues like this as citizens of the country, because I understand that we have the right to sue, but if you want to sue, how will you sue? Who are you suing? That's it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Victor. I beg to differ that we did not do the answers right. Perhaps we did not achieve what we set out to, but I think we made a lot of impact. There was a lot of impact that was made that is still resounding up until now. We did not probably achieve what we thought we would achieve, but there was a lot of shaking, right? And I don't think we should downplay how much impact was made then. I would also say this, making a change or playing a role or doing something is not always direct. What you're doing right now is something. Educating yourself, taking time to be informed, getting the right knowledge, the right skills, participating, learning your voice in forums like this. Those are building blocks. Another way I would say there's a recall system, which is what the Constitution actually puts in place, that you can actually go back to the voters who voted for that person and, start a referendum process, write to the electoral commission, and then do the whole referendum process all like it. But I would say it's quite cumbersome, but it's not impossible. It's not impossible. It's absolutely not impossible. I think with knowledge like that, we would be more armed, perhaps in another election, taking data, taking stock of who are the people that are voting in a particular region, actually taking down data. So in case you would have to do a recall, you would actually have the data of those that voted, because recall is not just for everybody, it's for those same people that voted, those same people that elected that person to office. They have to be the same people that will have to participate in recalling that person. So that means you also have to keep proper data of the people that voted, right? Now, that being said, maybe you don't necessarily want to go to the extreme of doing a recall. The person has been elected. Don't just leave the person there. The person's office, write to the office, put fire, criticize, lend your voice, find out what's happening in the corridors of that vicinity, of that position, right? Is there a bill? Do you have a bill to pass? Who are the people that are in charge of writing those bills? Because mind you, the people that are elected, they have a system around them. They have a system around them. They have people who curate the bills. They have people who formulate the things that they are speaking on in the Senate. There are people that they have writers, they have advisors, they have systems around them. Is there a way you can insert yourself into that system? Is there a role that you can play? Do you know someone who knows someone? Like, pay attention to who are the people he is giving positions within that office. Is there a way? Do you have a link to those people, right? Even speaking up on social media, talking about your own elected official. Okay, these are what we expect you to do. Sometimes people don't even talk about these people at all, so they are just doing what they are doing. But if you actually come out and talk about them, okay, someone might actually pick it up. Someone actually pick it up and do something about it. But in essence, what I'm saying is there are different things that we can do. That's not necessarily like a direct attack or a direct missile on the person that is being elected, but just things around it, like posting stuff in your community, posting movements, courtesy visits to the officials, whatever, having your own organization, maybe perhaps a student body, a student group, go there with your phone. Nowadays, you don't necessarily need the media houses to come. Go there with your social media and your phone, record him. Okay, we would just like to see your 30 days in office. What have you been able to do? Things like that. Sometimes we feel like these people are so far away. We can actually have access to them, not just leaving them to their own whims and their devices, actually letting them know that, look, the people that you're ruling, they have faces, they're educated, and they want to hold you to the standards that they expect you to be, So that's how to actively participate in politics. Simple ways. Being educated is one of it as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Before we come to the questions again, there's a comment, a contribution by one student in the chat box. Of the question you addressed before this last one on whether civil servants can participate in politics. Can I read it, man?
Okay, yeah, let me take it. It says, in Nigeria, the Supreme Court has ruled that civil servants are constitutionally free to participate in politics, but there are certain rules and regulations that must be followed, such as resigning their position 30 days before the election, receiving permission from their employer, or taking a leave of absence to contest an election. Okay, I'll have to look into that as well. But like I said, you will not be in active office if you're to participate. Thank you so much for that. Batele. Sorry if I bothered you. Thanks for that.
Okay, Rabiu Murtala, ask your question, please. Mr. Rabiu Murtala, I've asked you to unmute.
Hello?
I can hear you. Be audible, please.
Yes, good evening, good evening, sir. Good evening, ma.
Good evening.
Basically, I just want to make a contribution a little bit and have it a partial question. My first contribution is about being a civil servant participating or belong to one party or the other. I
Mhm.
think it's right to participate in politics as a civil servant. You can belong to one party or the other because I can use Lagos State as example. But what we just need to do is you participating in politics and having a party belong to, you just have to be diplomatic in it. Because if your party does not win an election in your local area or in your state, what will happen to you? I will the feel that I think one of the challenges we are facing in our country. If my party does not win a
Hmm.
political position, the winner of that party or the party that win that position, are we still going to be in the night time? Will he or she still need to buy my own suggestion or idea, even if I'm not in the same position and the same party with him or her? This is one of the challenges we are facing in our country nowadays. I just want to stop on that aspect, one. And second aspect is that as the citizen of our country, I think one of the challenges we are facing is that most of us as youth does not know when to fight, when to criticize, and when to ask questions. A lot of our youth leave that political party to some people, and we are claiming that we are not there. They are doing this, they are doing that. Are we all in that position? There's nothing bad for me being having a political party and start participating for my local government. I have to be active within my local government, within the state. So that when the time comes for me, if I may not campaign, I may not fight for any post, but they can give me a position because they know my activeness, they know my contribution in making things go smoothly within my local government, within the state. I think we need to just find a way of enlightening our youth and on when to fight, when to criticize, and when to ask questions. Another thing I want to say is when trying to passing bill, what are the procedure? Some of our youth does not know the procedure of sending bill to the house. Who are those to write the bill? Who are those to sign it? And who are those are we going to send the bill to that are going to read it in the house? These are the things we need to enlighten most of our youth in this aspect. These are the contribution I have. I don't have a question precisely. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you very, very, very much, Rabiu. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful contribution. That's in fact, that's a wonderful contribution. I think that's really sums it up, right? Because a lot of times we just feel that election and politics has to do with governorship election and presidency. There's so much, there is so much role you can play. There's so much you can do. There's so much other players around these other systems. And there's so many ways that you can make yourself visible, right? That is far away from presidency. Presidency is too far. It is too far. Start being relevant in your community. Start being a voice in your vicinity. Start being a voice there. Start being seen. Show up. Show up when they're calling for political participation. They're doing rallies. Show up. Join in the things that they're doing. Speak up. Lend your voice. And I love what you said about knowing when to criticize, knowing when to ask questions, knowing how to participate is very important. Because I think we are very heavy on the criticism part, but also we're very heavy on the criticism part, but then we leave the participation and the doing to other people. I don't know who we left it to. We just want to talk. But then actually doing what needs to be done and getting involved and raising up your hands to do the thing that's required to be done, we're a bit laid back on. But I think that we're getting there, with the education that's happening here on the Electoral College and, some sensitizations happening here and there. I see a lot more young people becoming more interested in these rules. I mean, the last elections we had a couple of young people participate as well. And I think some political parties also give leeway to these young people to also play a role. But then again, you don't necessarily have to even go for the offices, to the elected offices. There are some positions that you can vie for, you can be appointed, like you said, there are people that write bills, there are people that create these bills, and they always look for participants. I work in fintech, and I know that I work in HR, currently work in HR in fintech, and I received an email that a particular company, they're looking to come up with like a fintech bill. So they're looking for participants, people that will contribute, things like that. I mean, it's very important to at least nominate yourself, come up, when things are being done in a free and fair way, at least participate, so that when it's actually being pushed into law, you played a part, or you did your little bit, because if you sit back and wait for it to be formulated, it's too late, really. It's too late, because all you can do is criticize and cry about it. But if you can actually be part of the foundational work being done, I think we'll go a long way. So thank you so much for that, Rabiu. That's a really good contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma. We have Victor Ahmed Pachi. Can you ask your question, sir? Victor Ahmed. Victor, can you hear us? Hello, Victor. It appears network is
yeah. Okay.
bad, yeah. Okay. I can't find any question in the chat box. Just a few comments. There are no more. Okay. Ayi Lara Basit.
Good evening once again. Thank you,
Good
madam.
evening.
Yeah, I'm Ailara Basit. I just want to chime in on this this recall process of a thing. The recall process, as we were taught by ED himself in one of our classes. The constitution stated rightfully that a 2/3 of the election, a 2/3 of the votes, or how is the constitution was structured? I can't get the actual statements. I know it's the constitution, it's the 2/3 of the votes ahead that the candidates won. The 2/3 of the electorate has to sign the recall paper, which I think in my own opinion, is a very stiff obligation to meet, because I don't know how 2/3 of people that vote for you while you are now in the office will be very possible to now sign the paper to recall you when you are rightfully in the seat, in the drive of the car. How will people now tell you? How will people now tell you that calm down? We want to change driver. You can easily drive them inside the bush or drive them anywhere else that you want. So I don't feel there should be a way that we the citizen, as we were taught yesterday in the class, that as the fourth arm of the government should have direct impact in this our constitution. Probably maybe the amendments, or when the constitution is being deliberated on. I don't know. In one way or the other, there should be a way to participate in the constitution directly by the citizens. It's quite oblivious. 2/3. I don't think it will be attainable anywhere else in Nigeria, considering the fact that everybody has his or her own price. that's just the thing. So I'm just curious about this process, how possible it is And how realistic can it be?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a good question. I think it's possible. I think it's very possible. It's very, very possible. Well, first of all, you also have to have, I think, have a data of the people who are. I think we have a very poor data management system. You don't even know. We don't even have a way to access the people who voted or who actually voted. It's something that we really suffer in doing as Nigerians. Very poor data management system. So first of all, let's even know the people that we are contending with. Who are the people that are who do we have to lobby? Who do we have to speak to? So that's even the one thing, right? Secondly, it's possible if someone is grossly underperforming. I believe it, well, I don't want to mention names, but there was a particular person, it was a couple of years ago, who was actually really misbehaving, and his constituency actually considered doing that. I think it is very possible, as the constitution said. It happens in other systems. It happens in other regions, you know. But more than even recalling, even not, maybe we're not even going to that extent of recalling. What I'm even saying is this: can we even be part of? Because the person who is in power, mind you, he's not going to be working alone. He's going to be working with a group of people. He's going to be working with a whole structure. He alone is not just the person making the decisions, right? There will be people who he will put in place, in positions, to help him do one or two things, get information, you know, be spokesman for here and there, formulate the bill, you know, do all of these things, advise him and things like that. If we can even be part of that system, right? Because we have this culture of, we'll just elect the person and then we'll go and sleep, and then the person does wrong and then we'll start criticizing. If we can even be part of that system, fine, after electing him, still hover around him, still put him to the fire, still hold him accountable, right? Even if it's like visits or something, it's time for, oh, okay, sorry, Brian. Even if it's like organizing some kind of visits or official visits or things like that, or paying attention to the bill when it is being written, or what do you expect from him? Let it even be seen. Let it even be accessible to him, you know, whoever it is. Again, they don't operate in silos. They have a system around them. We might not even get to the extent of recalling them, since, like you said, everyone has their prize. You know, he might just end up distributing a bag of rice or bags of rice to the people, that they say they don't want to participate again. It's true. It is true. But okay, if we can't go to that extent, let us be part of the laws that are being made. Let us be part of the bills that are being passed. I don't know if I'm still being heard, but yeah, it's possible. But again, we have to start with capturing the data. Sorry, my internet is going off and on.
All right.
Yeah.
Are you done with your thoughts, man?
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, man. I believe that at this juncture, you have done a lot of teaching on constitution and citizens' rights. I cannot see any hand up again. Can't see any question in the chat box. Yeah.
You can ask INEC. You can request from INEC, because you know they usually have it. They have they actually have the data of people who voted, so you can request from INEC.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's no question again.
5A.
Yeah. There's no question again. On behalf of the college, we want to thank you, ma. Thank you so much for a very informative lecture. I believe that the students have learned a lot. So at this juncture, I will call on the students. I will unmute everybody to thank our facilitator. Don't forget that classes continue tomorrow, same time, and be in attendance. Thank you. I've asked everybody to unmute and thank
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank you very much.
You appreciate, ma'am. Everybody clap, ma'am.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Yes,
you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
All right. Class is closed. Tomorrow. Thank you.